welcome back. I'm with Maree now from Citizens Advice Bureaux. Welcome back, Maree. How are you?
Good, thank you, Megan.
We were just talking about that fire escape plan that you remember doing that in when you had your
when my youngest son was a lot younger, and we had this fire evacuation plan, and he knew to go out his bedroom window, not to come and get us,
but to
go out his bedroom window, and drop onto the garden.
Yeah, but as we were just saying, it's so important to have that in your home, isn't it? Because we do forget, we get a bit lackadaisical, and so we need to keep remembering that. Yeah, so do head along to fire.org.nz. Now, we're talking about buying on the internet.
Buying on the internet.
Gosh, it's huge now, isn't it, Maree?
It's huge, and you only need to think back 10 years, and it wasn't even thought of.
No.
And that, Megan, is part of the problem, that a lot of the consumer legislation we've got doesn't take into account how much buying and selling is being done on the internet.
And just how much it's grown in those 10 years.
Yes, and how things have changed.
They have changed a lot, haven't they? Well, I guess the good news is that they continually, our processes and systems should be getting better.
Should be getting better. For example, if you buy something off a website and it's simply a trader who's got an online website, you're covered under the Consumer Guarantees Act just as if you went in and bought from their shop. Trade Me gets a little trickier.
Okay. In what way?
Well, people say I won something on an auction on Trade Me, but the thing is, Trade Me isn't actually an auction. Trade Me isn't registered as an auctioneer under the 1928 Auctioneers Act.
And should it be?
No, I don't think it should be, because they say quite plainly, I had a reread of their rules and regulations at the weekend, and they say quite distinctly that they are not an auction in any way, shape or form, but people think they are.
Yes, because for all intents and purposes, if you've been involved in one, you certainly think they are.
And people think, oh, it's an auction, it's covered under auctioning legislation. Well, it's not. What actually, if you win on an auction, which is how we all describe it, you've actually won a competitive tender.
Right.
It's not an auction, but no one's going to refer to it as a competitive tender. But you're not covered under the Auctioneers Act legislation if the person selling your item is a trader, and that's hard to define sometimes. You may be covered under the Consumer Guarantees Act if you buy it at the buy now price.
Okay.
If you, I can see the confusion on your face, Megan. Whereas if you buy it as part of the auction competitive tender process, you probably won't have the Consumer Guarantees Act protection.
But if you do the buy now,
yes,
and buying with a trader,
yes, you are covered under the Consumer Guarantees Act.
So buy now is always a good way to go.
Buy now
offers
you the protection of the Consumer Guarantees Act, which always makes things a little bit easier. You may, in any purchase of Trade Me, have cover under the Contractual Remedies Act. It's another piece of legislation that applies to all contracts, and it says, in plain English, if you buy something based on what the person tells you and that information is false and that causes you to suffer a loss, you can claim under the Contractual Remedies Act at the Disputes Tribunal, for example.
Okay.
But it's more complicated than it should be. I think it's time that lawmakers updated existing legislation to include things like Trade Me. It's been around for a while now.
And it will continue to be. That's the other thing as well. It's not like it's just a flash in the pan thing.
No, like a lot of people said it would be.
Yeah, I know. So I guess some of the things that we have to watch out for is making sure that we, where we can, see what we're buying first, have a look at it first.
It's like any
cover
purchase.
Ourselves.
Do your homework first.
So you were talking about you've had an interesting experience when you've been shopping online recently too, which some of us have, had experience with too.
I would have maybe bought and sold, mainly bought about 400 or 500 things over the last 5 years. Never had a problem. Occasionally a bit long delivering, but never a real problem. Now, I bought a box DVD set about 2 months ago. The trader was based in Australia, which is okay with Trade Me as long as they've got a New Zealand bank account. They had a UK Hotmail address, which made me okay. Anyone can have a UK Hotmail address. Paid for the goods, didn't get anything, contacted them, they're coming, contacted them again, they're coming. I realised afterwards that he was just fobbing me off with excuses to get me past the 45-day feedback period.
And then, so once he thinks that that's over,
once he thinks that that's over, then I complained to Trade Me, they were really good. It may have been a standard letter, but it was a good standard letter outlining my options. They said I could go to the Disputes Tribunal, which I actually can't because the trade is based in Australia. So and I think it was only $71, but I think I would have if it had been a New Zealand trader, just to...
For the principle of
the thing.
So what were some of the warning signs?
That they were based in Australia, which limited my consumer legislation. They didn't place feedback when I paid, and most people do. The excuse is, I'll send it, I have sent it, oh, my mother's got one, I'll get her to send it, oh, I am, and then he promised me a refund, and that was like 3-4 weeks ago, and it's just not happening. And like we said before, you often learn more from your mistakes. Next time I'll just... He had good feedback though.
And that's the annoying thing, because you do trust that feedback. Anyone that's bought and sold online, that feedback's so important, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, well, Maree, thank you for telling us about that, and do remember, I guess, as we've just talked about, do as much research, trust your instincts as well. But if you'd like some more advice from Citizens Advice, remember they do have 3 locations, City, Bishopdale and Hornby, but jot down their 0800 number and keep it handy, you never know when you're going to need it. It's 0800 367 222, and their website is www.cab.org.nz.